Well, hey everybody, I have the amazing Sylvia Longmire from Spin the Globe Travel. Sylvia is an accessible travel writer and travel advisor for Spin the Globe. Welcome, Sylvia. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're always looking for like amazing, inspiring stories within the travel industry. My operations manager, Stephanie, came across your story and she's like, Cyndi, we have to track this lady down and talk to her. And I watched your awesome video. I think it was entitled "The View from Down Here." Is that right?
Yeah, for my photography books.
Yes,
Yeah.
I loved it so much, and I was like, let's track her down and get her on the show. So that's amazing. We're so honored that you're spending some time with us this morning. But tell our audience, we have a whole following of travel industry professionals, travel agency owners. So our community would love to support you better. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do on a daily basis.
Sure. I have kind of really a strange story as to how I got here. I'll try to condense it. I'm an Air Force veteran. I was medically retired from the Air Force in 2005 after serving for 8 years. I've had MS for 14 years, so I've been using a wheelchair full-time for about 5 years. Now, I started traveling since I was 5 years old. I've always been kind of a travel addict since I was really little. I was married for 10 years and I actually really wasn't able to travel very much during that time. Having kids kind of tends to interfere with that sometimes.
I think we all can relate with that,
yeah,
right?
we can all relate to that. So almost 4 years ago, I got divorced. And since my kids live with their dad during the school year, and I have them during the summer, but during the school year, I live by myself and I work from home and I can work pretty much from anywhere. So I found that I had all of a sudden a lot more time on my hands and a lot more freedom to travel. And I'm like, given all these changes in my life, I think now is a good time to maybe start experimenting with travel. But all of a sudden it's like, I can't walk and I have this, electric scooter to deal with. How is it possible to do this? And I was kind of a little nutty. I did a couple of road trips while I could still walk a little bit, but my first international flight or an international trip with the scooter, I'm like, go big or go home. I went to Dubai of all places, 16 hours, 16-hour direct flight from Orlando. Now I did have friends who were there. They were there working as professor and a teacher. So I had somebody to help me while I was there, but it's actually a really good thing that was my first trip, because I figured if I can do that, while not walking, if I can pull off Dubai, I can pull off almost anything. So after Dubai, a couple months after that, I went on my first cruise as a wheelchair user, because I had been on many cruises before that. And I went with my best friend and we did an Alaska cruise, and that was fantastic. And then soon after that came Iceland. Then came Australia, which Australia had been on my bucket list for like 25 years. And the trips just kept coming because my confidence kept growing. And I had always liked traveling by myself. I started traveling by myself in my 20s. But obviously traveling by yourself when you're able-bodied and traveling by yourself as a wheelchair user, two very different things. But I got better at it. And I said, I've been a professional writer. Like my primary career is as an analyst on border security and Mexico's drug war, which sounds totally crazy and totally unrelated to the travel industry, but that's what I've been an expert at that for the last 14 years. And I still write about that for American Military University. And so going from that career, so I've been a professional writer. I have 2 books on those issues. I'm like, if I've been writing about all this other stuff for so long, why not start writing about accessible travel? So I started my travel blog. And then after another year of doing that, I said, I've become an expert now at making accessible travel arrangements for myself. Why not make money doing that for other people? And it's not just a business decision, but my blog I had gotten feedback that I was really helping people in wheelchairs and with other mobility limitations to travel. And that really inspired me. I'm like, I can make this bigger and I can really help a lot of people, because fear in our community is so overwhelming. Like, it's not just a fear of traveling alone. Like, people are afraid to leave the house because they don't know if they're going to run into certain obstacles that are going to prevent them from traveling, if they're going to get hurt, if they're going to spend thousands of dollars to go to a place that isn't accessible, even though they've been told it's accessible. So I saw an opportunity to not just, make an income in a different industry that was a little more positive and uplifting, but to hopefully make a positive difference in the lives of people who just want to see the world.
I love that so much. And you know, when you follow your passion, it's so crazy what unfolds. And I think all of us work through fear, but especially in that community where you're like, what's around the corner? What obstacles am I going to face? It's a real tangible thing. So the fact that you're not only with full force and face that fear, but now you're being of service to others. What a beautiful, amazing journey. I love that so much. Sylvia, share with us, as the average agency owner, the average travel agent, what can we do better to support people that are disabled travelers? What can we do? How can we have that outreach? You know, where do we need to educate ourselves more so we can, because obviously all travel agents want everyone to travel. So what can we do better for that community?
I've been very fortunate to be a member of several travel agent Facebook groups, and I try to put out there as best I can what I do and that I'm available to help other people. And I've established some really great relationships with other agents who have not been shy about asking me questions. And one of the first things that I tell travel agents, the first thing is to get educated. And the number one thing that you can do is Special Needs at Sea is a company that provides wheelchair and mobility aid and medical equipment rentals to cruisers. And they deliver things like scooters, for example, or manual wheelchairs directly to the stateroom of a cruise ship, and other rentals at different ports of call. Special Needs at Sea provides a training program. It's called the CATA Certified Accessible Travel Advocate. And the training doesn't take very long. You can do it in just a couple of hours. And being the expert, and when I took it, I was so impressed at the stuff that I learned some things about it. Because it's not just learning about scooters, but it teaches you how to ask your clients the right questions while being sensitive at the same time, because you need to know what your clients' needs are. And that's the second thing. Number one, getting educated, and number two, knowing how to ask the right questions, especially when you don't have a disability yourself. Trying to understand what that is, whether it's a physical disability, whether it's something like a family with a child with autism, the deaf or the blind. Everybody has very specific needs, and going through that training program will teach you about what's out there to help people, and also how to be more educated on the different types of disabilities that are out there.
Yeah, I love that. Let's make travel available to everyone. And the other thing, because we've been following you now since we found you, I love that you kind of press on the travel suppliers a little bit to go, here's something I noticed, and they're listening. And I think that's most of the time I'm picking up that they're listening. Tell us a little bit about that, you know, putting yourself in that, really in an advocate role. I always say we advocate for the industry, but you're advocating at a whole different level. You know, talk to us a little bit about that, you know, when you travel.
And that's where my blog comes in. Some travel bloggers just write about the travel portion, but I have this whole different aspect to being a wheelchair user, where I'm a fighter. You know, I was a fighter before I was diagnosed with MS. I was in the military. You know, that's the kind of person I am. I've always been very vocal. And I have had mixed experiences with different types of travel suppliers. Airlines are an absolute nightmare. I've actually written blog posts, I think it was like 5 signs that airlines don't care about, people with disabilities or wheelchair users. Airlines are a nightmare for us, and we're always scared of damage to our wheelchairs. And recently there was a law that was finally passed after years and years of being postponed by lobbyists. And it was a congresswoman who is in a wheelchair who pushed for it. Oh, wow. And only now, after years and years and years of advocacy and activism, do airlines finally have to keep track of the number of wheelchairs they damage. They've been doing that with suitcases and baggage and stuff for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see those numbers. I have had more luck with the cruise industry. I am very, very fortunate to have partnered with Celebrity Cruises last year for the debut of the Celebrity Edge. And they invited me to be part of one of the preview cruises to write about and film the accessibility features of the cruise ship, but they also invited me to be a part of the design process. So they actually asked for my opinion regarding the physical accessibility of getting onto the magic carpet platform, as well as the lift for the pool. And I have never been approached by a travel company or a supplier to be part of that. And I wish that more travel suppliers would follow celebrities in example. And I know they have a disability representative for the company. And I was able to become part of that program because I'm a travel agent and met with some of the executives at the CLIA Cruise 360 conference last year.
I love that. And what message does that send about who they care, right? And when people care, that word spread, like word of mouth is gold. Like this video is going to be watched by thousands of people, and I'm sure you've shared that message elsewhere too, but that's amazing. They do need to do more outreach, and I love that your work is kind of opening that world. That's amazing. So one of the questions I always ask everyone that comes to the show, whether it's an author, a writer, a speaker, an advocate, is what was your favorite vacation you've ever been on in your life, and why was it your favorite vacation?
Yeah, and I mean, and I remember seeing that question and thinking, because I mean, last year I did 23 countries. The year before that I did 19. I'm usually gone a combined 5 months out of the year. So picking just, one trip, one destination is so hard. But I would say that probably last year, I did 3 weeks. It was the longest that I've been away from home by myself. And by the time the trip was over, I was ready to come home. But it was 3 weeks. I did 9 days in New Zealand. From New Zealand, I went to Singapore. I spent 5 days in Singapore. And then from Singapore, I went to Hong Kong and did 5 days there, and then came back to Orlando. And each location was so different. Even though, Singapore and Hong Kong are both in Asia, and there's some, history there, and there are a lot of people from Hong Kong that go to Singapore and vice versa and have homes and everything. But it was so fascinating. In New Zealand, I started in Auckland, and I was there with an accessible tour company, and we were driving the whole time. We started in Auckland and made our way all the way down to the South Island to Christchurch. I love helicopter tours. I did a helicopter tour down in Christchurch over the New Zealand Alps, where they film a lot of movies like Lord of the Rings. And the day before that, we drove through the remnants of a tropical cyclone. Now, I'm a Floridian, okay? I live in Orlando now. I was born and raised in South Florida, so I've done my share of hurricanes, but I don't know how people in New Zealand deal with cyclones. Like, no clue. I was freaking out, but my tour guide is like, we get storms like this that are stronger than just regular everyday storms, but I was a wreck. So that made it kind of a bit of an adventure, but New Zealand is just the scenery and the people, the Maori culture I'm fascinated with. I got to see a haka. That was on my bucket list. I got to see 2 live haka dances, which was amazing. And then going to Singapore. Singapore is one of the most wheelchair accessible places I've ever been, not just in Asia, but globally. And it's so modern and clean, and the people are so amazing. And it was the first foreign country I had been to where I could assume accessibility, like in the United States for the most part, rather than having to plan every single step out ahead of time and find out if I could get in there. By the 3rd day, I was like, I can just go and not have to stress out. And that makes such a huge difference. And then Hong Kong was fascinating because I've been around Chinese tourists in so many places, that it's really just this phenomenon that everywhere you go, the Chinese are traveling a lot more. And for religious and cultural reasons, the Chinese tend to not look very fondly upon people in wheelchairs and people with disabilities. I'm going into hostile territory. But it really wasn't as bad as I thought. And the accessibility in Hong Kong was better than I thought. And I learned so much. And I wasn't sure what Hong Kong was going to turn out to be, and it turned out to be really, really enjoyable. It was a really fascinating experience. So you combine those 3 things into one trip, for 3 weeks, and I was there by myself and came back. I'm like, if I can do that, like there's probably not a whole lot that I can't do. So that was a really amazing experience.
Yeah, and the whole time, I know you're a photographer, so you're taking pictures after pictures. Like, do you bring extra just hard drives by the 12-pack or what?
No, I actually, oddly enough, because people ask me a lot about my photography and what camera I use. Because I have MS, it affects my hands a little bit in that I can't lift anything heavy and keep it steady. And I can't fiddle. I don't have the dexterity in my fingers anymore to fiddle with small hand controls. I take all my photos with my iPhone.
That's amazing. I tell people all the time, you don't have to start, because we work with a lot of startups and we consult with people scaling their businesses up. But I'm like, you don't have to overcomplicate it with, I have all the big equipment. Half the time I don't even mess with it because it's just too much. Like, go for the iPhone. It just is such, and now they have the cool lenses. I don't know if you've seen them where you can
Yeah, I do. I use the lenses sometimes. And because I travel alone, I don't like asking people to take photos of me because I'm very, very picky about the photos. So I travel with a travel tripod that has a Bluetooth remote shutter.
Yeah,
so when it's folded up, it's about the size of a hot dog. So it fits in my little pouch that I have on my power chair. So all of my photos they're pretty much selfies, and the little remote control, I just hold it in my hand. So I don't have to worry about asking people to take photos. Now, people look at me sometimes a little strangely because they see this iPhone on a little 4-foot tripod and me doing my Instagram poses, because that's the game we have to play these days.
Of course.
But it works out, and I've been able to get some good photos in my chair and everything, and I have fun with it.
I love that. And you have to have fun with it. That's one of the things we train in our YouTube workshop. So I love that. Well, listen, I would love for everyone watching this to, one, go to spintheglobe.net, check out Sylvia's webpage. Also go to her Facebook page at Spin the Globe on Wheels and follow her amazing journeys. And I'm going to do one step further. For the next 30 days, if you are watching this video, and we're going to have it on the Cyndi Williams Travel Career Coach page, which is where it's public, you can share the post. Let's get Sylvia's message out there. Everyone that shares this post out, we're going to pull that copy of everyone that shared it, and I'm going to give someone Sylvia's book. So we'll put it in our raffle, and then we will get her. She has a book too on Amazon. You want to tell us real quick about your book? Because it's amazing. I just found out about it this morning. I'm like, this is amazing too. But this Wonder Woman, can we get her a cape? Like, what's happening?
I have 2 books, The View from Down Here and The View from Down Here Too, and they're all about my accessible travels. But my favorite thing about the book is that all of the royalties, 100% of the royalties from the book, I donate to my foundation that's called the Prejax Foundation. And we provide college scholarships to exceptional students who either have MS or a parent with MS.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. See, and I didn't know that either. I went into, sometimes we find out surprises on these interviews. So now I feel even better about running this contest. So guys, let's support Sylvia and the whole community and getting everyone to travel. That's our job as travel agency owners, as consultants, and many advocates in this industry. We can partner up with her on that. So Sylvia, thank you for sharing time with us today. This has just been, I think, my favorite interview so far this year. So
thank you so much for having me and for allowing me to talk about my love and my passion.
Yes, of course. Come back anytime. Much love and abundance to you.